Thanks, Dan. Yeah, good afternoon, or good morning, good evening to anyone on the call. My name's Alan Burnett. I look after the operations within Corso, which includes consulting and finance, and basically anything that's not finance and development. And I'm going to be your host today to talk about driving business agility and IT innovation with enterprise architecture. So the session's going to be probably about 45 minutes, and then we'll have a bit of time for questions at the end. And as Dan said, if you could post them onto the question section, then we'll try and deal with them as best we can when we get to the end of my presentation. So what I want to start with is kind of a statement, really. So enterprise architecture should really be a perennial vehicle for innovation. So I say it as a statement because you could probably ask yourself, is it? And looking at a number of engagements and that we work on, it's kind of maybe not kind of picture. But it's really the crux of what I want to talk about today, which is the notion of Agile EA, and how can we make EA a vehicle for innovation. And this includes involving a number of other different topics and approaches, which we'll cover through the presentation. So really, innovation and management and EA are, we see them as interwoven. It's because once you develop a good idea, you need to ensure that if you actually want to deliver it and implement it successfully, then you have to understand the EA element if you're going to make something happen. What a good idea in isolation is not worth anything until it actually is something you can invest in. And so, investing in a particular idea requires a degree of confidence that either a product or a service or an IT component or business process is going to make an actual difference. It's going to change things positively. And conversely, if you look at the flip side, IT requires traceability back to innovation, so we can understand where it's been driven from. So it's connecting these two elements, often disparate elements, connecting them together. As not having this traceability, it makes it difficult to actually see the value of IT and how it drives the business. One of the key questions we're always getting asked from an EA perspective is, how can we show that what we do in the EA world actually is providing some sort of value? So connecting these two elements together is somehow we can then start to see, here's an idea, how it's implemented, we see the value of that idea, and we can drive through our EA to understand and leverage real benefits. So looking at some recent engagements we had around, it's actually around looking at the quality of information within an organization. Okay, so taking the example of where innovation and EA work together. It was interesting that in this project we were working with a number of different teams within IT, and each of those we're working pretty much in isolation. Part of the project we were working on is looking at quality of information that flows through an end-to-end process. And actually, what came out of that was a real focus on quite low-level ideas. The people that worked in the individual teams and groups, they understood where some of the problems and issues were within this IT program that we're trying to run, this quality program. So you may sometimes look at innovation management, look at purely at sort of product-based and basing it around features of products. But actually, if you look at it in IT terms, it's actually leveraging knowledge that's out there. And perhaps as an EA team working in some sort of isolation, you don't get a chance to see that or understand that knowledge. So by combining and getting at the information that's in people's heads and the day-to-day knowledge of people and bringing that into the EA world, actually creates a very successful outcome. And in fact, when we look back at how we built a return on investment for that project, it was actually focusing on a number of the different small changes that we could make that came from ideas from people on the ground, and they were fed back into IT. So that's an example of innovation management and EA in action, and they should work together to perform a successful outcome. Sorry. Okay, so let's look. That's EA and innovation management together. I'll come back to each of these separately and try to understand where they fit together. Let's look at innovation management first. As I said, innovation management could be around products, it could be around programs, it could be around features, but also it's around IT. In fact, if you look at innovation management in a corporate sense, it's really just about quickly and effectively implementing goals through adoption of ideas. So an idea could be a simple idea, it could be allowed to a product or a process or a business model. And actually most organizations are beginning to realize that to drive business growth and maintain a competitive advantage, innovation needs to be discovered and implemented. And we need to do that in a way that we can actually do that quickly and ensure we get maximum value. So when we're implementing organizational goals, we need to leverage what's out there, what's in the individuals within the business, and also sometimes outside the business to give us the novel and ideas that are going to drive forward, make some sort of business change. Okay. But I think what we're seeing in terms of pure innovation management is it is sometimes a bit of an ad hoc process. Okay. So there are a number of examples. If you look out, if you even look at something like Starbucks, they've got a program where people can fire in ideas. Netflix did something very similar in terms of trying to find actually awarding a prize for great ideas. And these are fantastic programs, very, very good programs. But for most organisations to sort of manage the bulk of those ideas, say you quite often people turn to sort of social media or Yammer or some other sort of crowdsourcing option. You're quite often bombarded by ideas. So one of the key things to actually manage this is to have a more formal process. So what we're finding in either EA innovation or a pure innovation management play is that organisations are trying to get some sort of structure to that management of ideas. Okay, so we're not saying that it's being unstructured is a problem. It's just to try and manage that just by going out and saying, okay, just give us 1,000, hundreds and thousands of ideas. That's not necessarily going to work. So we have to have a process that's going to allow us to manage that effectively. And that's what I want to show in a kind of a simplistic form, the kind of innovation management process that we build into our tools. Okay, so an innovation management process involves a number of stages. Okay, and I'm going to cover some of these as we go through this, but just to give you a broad impression, you're going to get a lot of ideas coming in. There's going to be some sort of bulk set of in this discover and harvest section, you're going to get a lot of things coming at you. Okay, so essentially our process that we have here is when we're trying to look at managing some sort of innovation or strategy, we want to launch what we call a campaign. I'll come on to a campaign, exactly what a campaign is in a second, but just think of it as I want to change something and I want to group all my ideas into and anything I want to get from the outside world into a particular campaign. I want to promote some sort of discussion around those ideas. So I want a collaborative approach. And we're going to come back to collaboration a lot as we go through the presentation here. Now, this might actually be partners. It might be individuals in your own organisation. Quite often we see organisations working with partners. And again, it's very important that we do manage things like security. We have a notion of a community so that you can different communities can input their ideas in isolation to other communities. So it may be that you're working with partners during this discovery and harvest phase. But as you go through this process, we can see there's sort of a tapering of these ideas down to a short list. So we kind of triage and prioritize. So we need tools that allow us to combine things. So we have a range of ideas, whether they've come from workshops or individuals, or and we'll see some of the techniques we use in a bit later on. Some of those ideas will overlap. Yeah, some ideas will be small, some ideas will be very broad. Yeah, so we need to review those and understand those, rate them, so that we can understand not all ideas were created equal. So some people have good ideas, some people have great ideas. So we need to make sure that we can manage that. And as we go through and taper this pipe down, we start to build up a short list, and that may be based upon particular criteria. Again, part of the campaign you'll see in a second is around looking at goals. Criteria is going to give us some idea of mapping one idea or trying to understand the priority of one idea over another. So get to a point where we can propose a business case and determine the next steps. And in the pure innovation management world, we then look at executing that. And I'm sort of going to cut off at that point for a second, just to say, from an innovation management perspective, with respect to enterprise architecture, we've got a whole bunch of ideas here around a particular notion, and we're going to end up with a few that perhaps we'll make a business case for, and we want to start and implement. And that's where we'll come back into the process again. So the campaign, the way that we'd like to think of, I like to think of a campaign is that it's organised around a particular goal. So I want to make some sort of change. I want to improve something, or I want to make some sort of change. So it tends to be around a time period. So you've got a set period of time. That might be 3 months, or it might be a week, to try and get a number of ideas and concepts and people's thoughts, and collaborate with a whole bunch of people out there to elicit their ideas and thoughts and bring that in around that campaign. I'll show you some examples of that in a second. But in the tool, what we try to do is, with a campaign, is make it very simple, i.e. non-architecture focused, in order to be able to interact with the campaign. Okay, we use tools like gamification, and again, part of this whole process is, if we're connecting innovation and enterprise architecture and trying to understand, if we want to make a change, can we make a change, what's the value of that change, then we need to have some feedback. Part of that feedback can be gamification in its simplest form, looking at who has ideas that get implemented, that sort of thing. So all of those elements in here. This person, this group, have a whole bunch of good ideas, and maybe we should start to listen to those people. So this is those kind of tools that allow us to really get people involved in the process. And again, it's the collaboration piece that we're really keen on getting going. So, a campaign, set examples of improved process. It could be something more formal, like an application portfolio assessment, or just some sort of capability measurement. And I've got some examples of campaigns and how these work as we go through. But what we're trying to do is just address just enough, just in time. Okay, so get enough thoughts and ideas around a particular campaign in a timely fashion, so we can then start to elicit some change from that. So in the tool, we might have a dashboard here. So this is just a screenshot showing that there's a whole number of campaigns. So improve our IT agility is an example of a campaign. Ideas to improve claims handling. Ideas for increase our customer loyalty. Modernize our IT portfolio. Down to specific things like making our parcel delivery flexible. All of these are examples of campaigns. They will have owners, sponsors. Importantly, have a goal. As I said before, they have a time span. And actually, on our dashboard here, we just look at the number of ideas that have been submitted. It doesn't have to be ideas, by the way. It can be, if you're looking in an IT perspective, it could be requirements or features or anything else you wish to put into here. It's very flexible in terms of the tool. But again, from a user perspective, if I'm trying to get people to engage with my architecture, my world, then we have to make it so it's easy for them to engage, and if they're not necessarily an architect themselves, because a non-architect can have a great idea that may impact their architecture. So this one campaign here, the Embrace Customer Metrics for the Customer Loyalty, which was on the previous screen, this is a URL. So this is a page that an end user would get. So we would send out, or you would send out a URL to a whole number of potential people you want to incorporate into this process. And they would then have access to this one single page. So they wouldn't need to necessarily understand, especially if we're looking at EA, in an EA world, they have to understand architecture frameworks or diagrams or some of the nuances of enterprise architecture. A number of us have been working with for years. All they need to understand is that this is what we're trying to achieve. What do you think can help embrace customer metrics for customer loyalty? There's a description. Here's some of the people that have added ideas already, and we can add our own. There's a little contribute button at the top there. So I won't go into the mechanics of the tool, but it's very easy to click on a button and say, right, here's my idea, and that goes then into the pot, and we can work with that. Again, on here we have some examples of just a gamification piece, some rankings and ratings, so we can sort of rank these ideas as we are here. Later on, we can do more complex things around comparisons around particular criteria, and start to get a view of how these ideas flow through the process. So looking at that back at that tapered model again, this is very much the front end. We then start to put attributes and look at values. We've got charts and pivot tables and various techniques we can use to try and compare these ideas and bring them down to a group that we're going to work with, a small group. So that's in essence is the innovation management piece. Now that actually stands on its own in the tool, but where it's very powerful is when you then take it to the next step. And that's we talked about Agile enterprise architecture. So Agile is a phrase that gets bandied about quite a bit. We've heard the term is just in time, just enough, and Agile development delivery. But the way this impacts or affects EA, and what we think is missing in EA, is delivery of just in time and just enough architecture. So I've worked on a whole number of projects, or we've just done modeling after modeling after modeling, and really what do we get from it? Apart from perhaps a series of diagrams, and then we started to move on to perhaps doing heat maps around sort of pulling out information. But what we didn't really get was an easy way to look at the context of a particular change. And that context is kind of just enough architecture to make a difference. So if we pin it back to what I've just talked about before around a campaign, I've got a campaign, a number of ideas come out of that. There is a set of architecture components that relate to that. Okay, what are they? And is there an easy way to expose those and work with those? And that's kind of just enough that I'm talking about for a particular campaign, just enough architecture to work with. And as we move on to the presentation, we'll see some of the techniques we use to support that. So that's just enough and just in time. What we're trying to do is meet the desires of the stakeholders. Okay, and so when we look at our campaign or our approach, there are a bunch of stakeholders that are involved in the process. There's a goal, a single goal that we're trying to achieve. Okay, and so we build just enough for that. There are times, and if we look at some of the maybe defence projects or large complex programs, then perhaps this isn't quite the approach that you need. But in most cases, and most commercial cases, and a lot of defence cases as well, and governments, the benefit is really just trying to boil it down to what we need to make the change. So the agility is really focusing on that goal or that business outcome, and the agility is just focusing on that and trying to understand what is required to make that change, and so we don't waste our time trying to model everything. We just model what's required. Okay, and we can iterate through that process as well as we go. And again, we collaborate with people. So running a campaign, we're collaborating with people on that campaign. So it is an iterative process. Have we got enough architecture here to actually solve that particular problem? Yeah, so one of my campaigns was doing before, as we looked at it, was to improve the claims management process. So have we got enough architecture to do that? So we would collaborate or need to collaborate with people in order to understand, have we got enough architecture? And by collaboration, I don't mean just creating a website and putting it out there for people to look at. I mean actually saying actually formally inviting people to collaborate with the architecture. And using the platform we have here, that's a natural thing. It's a SaaS-based platform. It's very easy to connect to because you don't install anything. Therefore, we can invite individuals to collaborate. So individual system owners can collaborate directly with us. Subject matter experts can collaborate directly. Partners, technology partners can all collaborate, and we can formally invite them to help us build an architecture. So I go back to this campaign of improving a particular process. Each of the components in that process, I can ask people to collaborate, get their ideas. Am I building the architecture? Is it just enough? Okay, just enough to make the difference. Okay, so it's all about, for us, it's all about just enough architecture. Now there has to be, a consistent architecture. Okay, so we have to have enough to actually do something, and it has to be consistent throughout. And we used the back end underneath this is underpinned by a full meta model with associations, all based around the Archimate model. So we're not saying we should do this at the expense of consistency. There is a formal process behind here. But what we're trying to do is get the big benefit of enterprise architecture is the ability to slice across the architecture for decision making. What if? So the underlying model is consistent, and then the rest of it is down to the skill of the Agile enterprise architect. So I've talked a lot about collaboration. I sort of alluded to saying I want to look at just enough architects to make the difference. I want to be able to manage and actually ask people to collaborate. So I want to organize workload. So what we've done here is we've borrowed, I'll go on, talk a little bit more about what a Kanban is in a second. Some of the Agile techniques out there around software development use Kanban boards as a kind of workflow. What we're proposing here is a similar sort of approach, but actually rather looking at delivering software or delivering features and functions, looking at how do we deliver a particular architecture. So we have a Kanban board that allows us to understand and organize our effort around building an architecture, allows us to assign tasks to people. Okay, so I've got a system in this architecture. Have I got all the interfaces? I don't know. So what I do is invite the person who does know formally to say, have I understood all the interfaces that there are to this application as you understand it? That person then will either comment back, or they will actually update the model themselves, or they'll just communicate with me in some way to say, this is what you need to look at, and we can build the architecture out. So it is enough. So we can make comments, we can tag things, etc. So the collaboration piece is very important. It's built around this Kanban notion. It's built around a focused process. So the Kanban world, for those of you, how many people are familiar with Kanban? A number of you probably are. It's been around for a number of years. Originally around an engineering process, okay, around delivery. She brought from Toyota, how Toyota engineers could rethink their methods and match inventory demand, especially in when they were building their systems. Okay, to achieve high levels of quality and throughput. I personally actually first came across Kanban in the manufacturing space when in the early 90s, a lot of the motor manufacturers were moving from sort of press and process-based manufacturing to cell-based, where everything went on in a small cell, and the parts came from the suppliers just in time to build each component. So each stage in the manufacturing process would have some sort of external input, and that revolutionized the manufacturing processes, especially around car manufacturing in the early 90s. 10 years ago or so, it was reinvented again as sort of a knowledge management process, so that we could use a process of and it's often used in software development, of managing it as you move through a process. So examples of those would be, and in our tool we have a number of examples here. I won't go through all these in detail, but we've got some around innovation. Each of these has a set of stages, different set of stages. As you move through the stage, you're looking to either, especially with an ideas management, you're looking to either complete or move through particular gates with an idea, the points that may be rejected through that. You might be looking at a roadmap in terms of where each stage represents time. Okay. Requirements management, where a stage represents, if you look at sort of the classic V of requirements management, then as you develop your requirements, they will move through different stages. Another example of a Kanban. Or it could be something more formally like application portfolio management. all of these are examples of Kanbans that can be used. Another example that we use a lot in our tool is if you take the TOGAF view. So if you now looked at a Kanban board applied into the ideas and the management space. We look at the EA space and take an approach like TOGAF, where you've got some very distinct sections, the distinct processes you move through building an architecture. You can overlay, we overlay our Kanban sections with the different elements or different stages of the ADM. So you can look at the vision, the architecture, information systems, technology, architecture, opportunities and solutions, and as you deliver into work programs and projects all around the requirement space. So again, looking at using the Kanban board to formally manage the TOGAF process. We're still being agile in terms of we are focusing on a particular outcome, particular business outcome around a goal. We've got the time that we want to spend to model the solution, and we're collaborating with people at each point to do that. So the Kanban model for me is at the heart of our Agile EA approach. So sort of taking the two sections we've talked about together, looking at the innovation management piece, looking at enterprise architecture, or let's say Agile enterprise architecture, we can see that there's a link, there's a step through the process. As I build up my ideas and bring them into, solidify them into a set of things that we want to do. They could be projects, they could be programs, they could be just an idea that we want to change that we want to achieve. They still need to be validated against our architecture. So we're still doing the classic kind of architectural view. We're not trying to shortcut that. The interfaces across these different stakeholders in the model, the enterprise architecture group, the PMO, project prioritization, and the delivery, those interfaces still exist even with Agile EA and even with connecting to the ideas and initiatives. So there's not a shortcut for trying to work closely with other parts of the organization. We still need to be able to put a head above the parapet and say this is the way we need to, some of the changes we need to make internally in order to deliver against our architecture, to use the architecture to govern what we deliver. If that process is broken or is not functioning fully, then agility is not going to help. That still needs to be done. What we are saying is that by focusing on particular outcomes and focusing on collaboration, and what we can do is start to bring these teams closer together. And also, looking in terms of the ideas, initiatives, and strategic delivery, bringing that into more closely into our architecture, into the PMO, and down into the actual work that's going to be done, down to the projects and programs, and all the while focusing on our vision, goals, and strategies. So, we need to be able to have stakeholder views. Our platform, or the way we put our platform together, is focusing wholly on this, on trying to get different groups, disparate groups, to collaborate around a particular outcome, and that is the way that we believe that we'll be able to bring these pieces together by using innovation EA to bring those pieces together. And part of that is a single platform. So, you can do innovation management on its own. That's great. You could do EA on its own. What we're doing is bring a single platform to link those together. The stakeholders that we have, the people, the individuals that we want to involve in the process, aren't always going to be architects. In fact, to make this successful, they're not going to be architects. They're going to be people with good ideas. They're going to be people in subject matter experts. They're going to be system owners. They're going to be process owners. They're going to be part of the PMO. They're going to be delivering things. All of these individuals need to be able to have some sort of interaction, and not just passive interaction. As I mentioned before, quite often, I've been guilty of this myself in the past, is you put a website up there and say, look, there's your architecture, it's easy, it's on a web page. Well, actually, that's not quite enough. So you need to be able to use multiple platforms. The expectation now is that there are multiple ways of accessing the data and accessing information simply. So it might be from a system owner perspective. I've got a URL that says, okay, that is I own the CRM system. Okay, I've got a URL into that. I can start to fill in the attributes, the attributes that we have in our enterprise architecture association with other elements. I'm the person who knows about that. I know best. I'm the subject matter expert. Therefore, I should be the person that fills that in, not perhaps somebody in the EA team. By doing that, getting that participation and collaboration, that breeds a sense of involvement, engagement. So it's adoption is the key. That's getting. How do you get people to adopt things? You make them feel part of it. Make them feel like they're actually contributing to it, buying into it. So again, this notion of direct collaboration. I would like you to collaborate with me on our architecture together is the key, as well as being able to access it by various different mediums. So we focused on mobile. We focus on slicing, dicing data by pivot tables, simple charts. We want to bring in information from spreadsheets, produce PDFs, those sort of things. So we try to encompass those in our platform, so that we can access the information readily. And in fact, I do most of my presentations of the tool on iPad. It's you can walk around with it. If you're in a workshop, if you're in a client situation in a workshop, you can get the iPad out and just fire it down. There's no having to look through diagrams, etc., to find the information you need. It's readily available. So in order to bring these elements together, in order to achieve some sort of agility, then we need to be able to access the data readily in bite-sized format. So we've talked about the platform, just a screenshot reel or some various screenshots in different areas, just to sort of look at how we might see different parts of the architecture from different views. So we've got a sort of Kanban board at the top there. So if I'm interested in a particular change process, I can see what's involved in that. So I've got a number of applications in here that some aren't involved. I thought they were involved in a particular change, but they're not. Some we're going to redevelop 3 of those, so on and so forth. Right-hand side, I've got a pivot table. I want to look at some of the financial information, sort of the cost-based information around my application portfolio. So again, I can slice and dice very quickly and easily by here. I'm looking at what application is a standard and what cost I have against that. I might want to visualize things in a roadmap. So so I've got my portfolio here of what's involved in this particular change. When are these things going to be live? So I've got some applications and work packages, understand the go live dates there, and also some business capabilities, so I can understand from a roadmap perspective. And again, we can roadmap anything on here. Anything that's got a date property against it, you can look at the roadmap. So it could be a capability, it could be a process, it could be technology. And again, what's not shown here is that we can kind of visualize other relationships that exist as well. So I might want to look at which applications in a particular location, or which applications rely on a particular technology, and highlight those in my roadmap. And we've got some things like bar charts or stack charts that allow us to visualize, in this case, stacking a whole set of attributes around sort of quality. And in an APM example here, we're looking at the applications and saying, okay, in terms of business quality, in terms of operational quality, complexity, how do I rank those applications? Okay, so again, tools to do this. as well as being able to visualize things in kind of Archimate type viewpoints. And all these based on the same underlying model, and that model is the same as the model that you can then start to collaborate with others on. Okay, so to finish off with, in terms of what we're trying to say, yeah, innovation and EA are interlinked. Okay, so by encompassing both of these different approaches, that's how we get the wider organisation involved. It's about adoption. One of the key issues that we find to adopting any of these tools is usually how can I get onto the estate, and then how can I get people to use it. Okay, so we're trying to address both of those by a SaaS approach for the tooling. So it's very easy to set up. You just need an email address to get access to it, and collaboration, just enough architecture which allows us to get the various stakeholders. So collaboration is key in that. It's key in creating a vibrant practice both for an EA and innovation. So if you're looking to build a center of excellence, then it's around this collaboration piece. It's very key. So we find adoption is reducing the barriers. Okay, so providing users with consistent information in the right format. That's how we get people to adopt it. We get just enough EA for credibility and just enough EA to be able to maintain a model. So by adopting agile processes and focusing on collaboration around just enough architecture, then maybe just EA can be a vehicle for innovation.